had a roommate who like subsisted off of 7-Eleven for like an entire year.
Really?
Mostly because he was on the spectrum and it was like his safe food for a good chunk of a year.
That's nice to have. Thanks, 7-Eleven.
Except for the fact that 7-Eleven's food is, I would say it's defined as ungood for you.
Yeah, it does not nourish your body in the way that food should or must.
So today is 7-Eleven.
That's why we're talking about, unless you're in a different part of the world where they put the dates in the other order, then it's 11/7 and you have no idea why we're making these 7-Eleven jokes. Did you think about that one, Tristan?
No, and it's odd because I actually write my dates like year, month, day. So that works actually.
Year, month, day.
Yeah.
So it's
if it's in alphabetical order,
2023.
it's always correct. 2023-0711.
Year, month, day. I guess that's, yeah. So it would be 2023, 7-Eleven.
Yeah, so only like in Britain, I guess, where they say like, oh, on the 11th of June, the 11/7.
Right, because they would do it, because then the reason they do it that way is so it's smallest to biggest unit, right? Day, month, year.
Yeah.
The 11th of July, 2023.
I think we're overthinking this.
We're overthinking this bit.
It's one of many mistakes that we'll be making in the next hour or so. As Scott, I regret to inform you that I have once again fucked up.
Yeah, we did it again, and I just gotta say, normally we would issue an apology video for our fuck ups, but
my ukulele's broken.
Well, the ukulele's broken, so instead we're gonna do this podcast. This is gonna come out so long after that.
It's not gonna be relevant
the joke
by
is
then.
Relevant. All right, this is a corrections episode of this podcast. We'll talk more about that after we introduce the concept of this podcast.
Yeah.
This is a podcast called It's Probably Not Aliens, where we look at the TV show Ancient Aliens and just other ancient astronaut theory and conspiracies, and we look into them. Sometimes we debunk them. Sometimes we just sort of like talk about them. And while learning about the really cool history of people and places and artifacts and time periods. And it's just a fun time that we have on this show. And I have an excuse for fucking up because my name is Scott and I know nothing. I don't know anything. I come into this show not even aware of what topic we're doing each week. Sometimes I forget we're even recording a podcast. I asked Tristan today, like a minute after we were supposed to be recording, I was like, wait, are we recording today?
Yep. My name's Tristan and I do the research, but obviously in the like 7 days I get between each episode to research these things, make a lot of goofers, make a lot of oopsie daisies. And I think that is a perfectly acceptable thing for humans to do on a podcast. I try my best, but I think that if you at least are honest about your fuck ups and you talk about it in a quarterly episode, then I think we're good. And I think these are fun because not only do we do corrections, but usually we get awesome submissions of like bonus extra information.
Yes.
That we can also add to the conversation.
And it's just fun. And I like doing these episodes as well because I think it keeps us in check. It keeps our egos in check and lets everyone know that we are not really academic experts in a lot of the stuff that we talk about. In most of the stuff we talk about, we're just people who like learning about stuff. I mean, Tristan, you are much more learned than me, but I would say a lot of times we like to have experts on, and when we don't, we're relying on, very quick turnaround research. And this podcast is for entertainment mostly. So we appreciate the people who do write in and correct us when we get stuff wrong or when we just miss some information that is also cool.
Yeah. And so the way that I do it, just so that people won't be like, hey, you forgot to mention the thing that I mentioned, is that I basically do it roughly in episode order and add stuff as we collect them over the things. So
yes,
basically the way that it tends to trend is that the older episodes, as they get more and more thoroughly covered, become less of a part of the episode and we focus more on stuff because we get more corrections on episodes shortly after they come out than like months later. So
yes,
we tend to get to, and we're still hopelessly far behind. That's why we're doing this every quarter because there's so many.
Yeah. Let's dive into it. So let's jump into some corrections then. What episode did we get stuff wrong with?
The most recent one, or the oldest one that we start off with, is the Band of Holes, all the way back in episode 27.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just a very quick one, in that I said in episode 27, apparently I implied that Machu Picchu was the capital of the Incas when it was Cusco. Small detail, but I wanted to know. I'm pretty sure I knew that, but maybe I worded things wrong. But yeah, Cusco was the famous capital of the Inca Empire, and it was a big, fancy empire too.
And that's why they named... See, that's why they named the character Cusco in Emperor's New Groove, right?
Sure. Why not?
That's what I think. Maybe I'm wrong, and we'll get a correction about this correction.
David Spade has entered the chat. So next week we jump forward to the last episode that we haven't covered, which was our two-parter on Renaissance art.
Ooh, yes.
Where we got a lot of fun juice to cover on in this one. First one is that someone explained to us why the Holy Spirit's represented as a dove, and it's because of Luke 22, where the Spirit of God is hovering over the water. The word hovering is a bird used to describe a mother hen protecting its chicks in Hebrew, and it could also be translated as brooding, which is a term for raising baby birds.
Brooding is fun, though. I like the idea of God as like Batman watching over Gotham City. I am Batman. I am God. I'm God.
Have you seen my very mildly successful Twitter thread where I have been inventing a new Batman villain by the name of the Game Changer, who keeps making increasingly insane game show based ways to torture Batman?
Is this character loose? Would we fan cast potentially a Sam Reich in this role?
This is directly just like, what if Sam Reich became a Batman villain? Which basically, if you were to watch Game Changer, is essentially it is increasingly becoming the backstory of a future Batman villain.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, especially with the finale, one of the
escape room episode.
Not the actual finale. Yeah, the escape room episode. Yes, very, very good.
Yeah. Someone I apparently referenced to one of these paintings as the Immaculate Conception.
Oh wait, yes, I know this.
This is not Immaculate Conception. Immaculate Conception regards the conception of Mary by Saints Anne and Joaquin, not the conception of Jesus by Mary and him.
No, that is a common misconception. Again, for anyone who's somewhat new to the show, I did go to Bible college for a little bit. Jesus was his whole thing. It was just a virgin birth was for Jesus. The Immaculate Conception was this idea that Mary, I believe. See, now we're getting into dangerous territory where I'm going off of my memory, but I believe it was the idea that Mary did not have original sin. And that was that way when she did give birth to Jesus, Jesus also did not have original sin. Okay. And therefore could be, holy and pure and whatnot. I think that's what I remember.
That makes sense. Next thing I got is that there's two jacked babies in one of the paintings we covered, and we didn't know what the other one was. And someone mentioned that it's St. John the Baptist.
Nice.
So that's the other jacked baby.
John.
Yeah. Getting all that whey protein in. And
yeah.
There's a lot of protein in hummus, and they have a lot of hummus in Judea. So maybe they're just jacked on chickpeas.
That's the baby diet. Baby gets born, immediate, all protein diet.
Yeah.
All protein. That's all you need.
Huge babies. Also, angels in the Bible do appear human-like in the Bible. The wrestling between Jacob and Israel, for example. So I guess I think I mentioned that mentions of angels in the Bible only show them as inhuman monsters, and that it's later artistic interpretations that make them human, but apparently that's not the case.
There are, there probably are some. It's a real mixed bag, these angels, because sometimes they are like monsters that always have to, because the very first thing that angels say almost all the time is be not afraid, because they are terrifying. Yeah, I'm sure there are representations of humanoid angels.
It's almost as if the Bible was written by multiple authors over thousands of years.
Well, I don't think that's contested by anybody. It actually was. Yeah, for sure.
All right. I'm sure someone's already said, but a fun fact about the devil butt. Excellent. We get to talk about the devil butt again.
The devil butt. Yep.
It stems from the belief that human faces point upward towards God and demons point away, witches were said to have kissed the devil's ass to sell their soul in some cases. So they basically were you look up to God with your face. So what do you use if you have a face to look down at the devil?
You look at devil butt.
Yeah.
Do you use your butt to look at the devil, or do you look? Because you can do both. You can look up to God and point your butt at the devil. But you're saying you use your face to look at the devil's butt? Why is the devil not looking at me? Turn around, devil. What are you looking at?
Looking at your butt.
All right.
He's checking you out. Okay. Apparently I also flubbed a line when I was talking about Onfim, the really cool story of how we found in refuse some of the homework of a 9-year-old kid in ancient Novgorod, which is one of the coolest bits of history I've ever seen. Cause it's all of these drawings and him as a knight and all sorts of stuff. And I'm this is awesome.
Yeah. It's just like kids doodling.
Yeah. And I think I said that Novgorod was part of Russia in the past. This was me obviously not speaking correctly because Novgorod is, of course, was independent back then and is now part of Russia.
Gotcha.
And when Anfim was alive, Novgorod was the capital of its own powerful independent republic that was a major exporter of furs and Europe's biggest exporter of wax and honey. So there's some Novgorod facts.
Biggest exporter of wax and honey.
But Novgorod is today now part of Russia, but it wasn't back then. And I think I knew that, but then my brain spoke incorrectly.
Just got it flipped around. Yeah. It can happen.
The other one part is we talked a little bit about whether or not Mario fucks, and someone pointed out that the only canon Mario. I
don't remember that, but okay.
We did. I do remember this. But the only canon Mario is Bob Hoskins, and he absolutely fucks.
Yeah.
Wanting Luigi out of the house so he can fuck is the inciting incident of the whole documentary.
That's true. And again, that is the only canon Mario. That's interesting. Well, that's our answer.
Mm-hmm.
Mario fucks, everyone.
Mario fucks. It's official. It's canon.
Mario fucks everyone.
Everyone knows what cake is. I think that the Zoomers now use that. So
I mean, he's got a ground pound, you know? He's got to go to ground pound town.
Oh, God. We're an extremely normal podcast, by the way.
If someone sold a shirt with Mario on it that just said ground pound town, I would buy it. But it would have to be a slightly off Mario, like one that is legally distinct and like definitely is like, that's kind of Mario.
Unbuttoned
it's not
shirt,
quite there.
overalls sort of hanging down, just completely jacked.
Yeah.
Has like a tattoo on his chest that says good girl.
Oh, boy.
Okay. So the other one, this is a big goof 'em up that I did. I did a couple big goof 'em ups when it came to the history of the early Ottoman Empire and the Byzantine Empire. So Constantine wasn't the one who split the Roman Empire in half. Constantine and his father actually reunified the previous administrative divisions, where Diocletian split it into two empires in 4 quadrants with one emperor and one co-emperor, each to respond to outside threats more efficiently. The split of the Eastern Roman Empire, which sometimes goes colloquially as the Byzantine Empire, was after the death of Theodosius I in 395 CE, 58 years after Constantine's death. The ruling class of the Eastern Roman Empire also did not become fully Hellenized until the reign of Heraclius in the early 600s.
Okay. So summarize this for me. What did we get wrong? And then what was sort of the...
So I claimed because Constantine was, like, if I remember correctly, the person who moved the Roman capital away from Rome and towards Constantinople. And I conflated that with the fact that at a certain point, the Roman Empire splits in half and becomes 2 distinct countries, the Holy Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire.
So this correction is basically, there are 2 different events, and then we just sort of got...
I kind of mashed them together in my head because my knowledge of early Middle Ages history is bad. I'm not really much of a European historian, and anytime I talk about European shit, I get stuff wrong.
Sure.
So really, the person who really split the empire was not Constantine. Constantine, if anything, reunified the empire because previous emperor Diocletian had actually created, like, the empire had 2 emperors, like co-emperors, who took over 2 different ends to manage, like, invasions better because it was so big at that time. And Constantine brought that shit back together. But 58 years after he died, Emperor Theodosius I in 395 split the empire in half.
Gotcha. And
that the ruling class of the Eastern Roman Empire, or they were not Hellenized, which means they didn't, like, become, like, Greek until the early 600s, or at least not fully Greek.
Okey-dokey.
In the reign of Emperor Heraclius. The other bit is that Greek self-identification as Roman continued widely until the rise of Romanticist Greek nationalism, drawing from the classics. In some cases, it continued into the 20th century with Peter Sharonis anecdote, etc. So for a long time, Greeks didn't actually identify with, like, Socrates and Athens and stuff, but they more identified with, like, being Romans until a sort of resurgent Greek nationalism in, like, the 19th, 20th century.
Okay. And
it's weird because now, in some ways, the the Russians claim to be like the continuation of Rome because Caesar, the name for the emperor of Rome, right, got turned into Kaiser at one point. And also became Tsar. And because the Eastern Roman Empire, its big distinction from the Western Roman Empire was that they were Orthodox Christians as opposed to Catholics.
Okay.
At a certain point after the fall of Constantinople, Russia sort of eventually started to think of itself as like the protectors of Orthodox Christianity. And to this day, they kind of try to act in that role to some extent. And so sometimes they get called the Third Rome.
All right. I have to ask, how confident are you in the things that you're saying? Because this is all off the cuff, and we could have to issue another correction. I could. There's some. I know that there's some stuff I'm trying to be very general and focus on things that I do know about, but there could be there might be some oversimplifications going on there. But that's fine. That's the broad strokes, and we'll cover those in a future correction episode if it comes to that. Mm-hmm. So there you go. Yeah. The other one too is that I said that Osman was the person who overthrew Constantinople. That is not correct. This was a really dumb mistake on my part about basic Ottoman history. So Osman was the Sultan who basically created what we call the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire existed for like 150 years before the fall of Constantinople. Okay. And so the actual Sultan who conquered Constantinople was Mehmed II. Gotcha. For anyone, if you want like a cultural comparison, Mehmed is basically Muhammad in Turkish. Cool. And Mehmed II is known for like, once somebody said this, I like smacked my forehead and I'm like, yes, of course. How did I forget that? Then Constantinople's walls are called the Theodosian walls, which I kind of mentioned earlier. Oh, yeah. Land-based cannons had been used in Europe for over 100 years by 1453 when the city was conquered. So even then, I just repeated the mistake I think I made in the last one. So oh my gosh. I didn't say, I think I said it was like the advent of cannons, but I do think that very famous, like what's it called? I feel like Constantinople is like the most famous case of like ancient medieval city walls being knocked down by cannons, which is like a very symbolic of the changing period that was going on. And also was like the rise of like the Ottoman Empire, which to a lot of people was very threatening because Europeans were like, oh shit, there's like this super powerful Muslim empire that's like expanding into Europe, because they didn't stop at that. There's like a lot of the history of Eastern Europe and the Balkans and stuff like that has to do with like struggles against the Turks in the centuries after this. So just to clarify this part of the correction, the idea that it was the invention of cannons that took down Constantinople is wrong, because they had been invented like 100 and so plus years earlier. But maybe is this like the most or just a very famous example of like using the cannons to break down the walls? And that's basically the reason why it sticks out is because the Theodosian walls were like known as like, this is why Constantinople will never fall. It's like the impregnable city. Like these walls are ancient. They've stood for centuries. They're like the most amazing walls ever made, and they were brought down by cannons, which again were not new. They were not new. They had been around for 100 years, but this is I think like the most famous case, but it definitely wasn't the first time that cannons had ever been used. Man, history is very fun. It can be very confusing. Yes, especially when you get into Eastern Europe. Yeah, things get very complicated here. All right, are we moving off of it, or are we? No, we're still going with it. Okay, let's keep going. I fucked up super hard on this episode. All right, or should I say, we got a very thoughtful Twitter thread that kind of covered everything in really good detail, and it's worth doing. By the time the Romans conquered, all was left was Constantinople, the Despotate of Morea, and the Empire of Trebizond, all of which were minuscule, with Constantinople being essentially a vassal of the Ottomans more often than not for several decades. All right, let's move on to another correction. Sure. All right, now let's move on to Yonaguni. Yes. So I think I mentioned that that Japan extended to Kamchatka, which is a thing that I actually knew was incorrect, and that this is actually a current source of border tension between Russia and Japan, because there's these islands called the Kuril Islands that currently belong to Russia, but like they've been owned back and forth by Russia and Japan for over the last like 100 or so years, and they are still a point of like border friction between the two countries about who owns them. I see.
I also said that DDR Jake was known for this is the most important correction of all.
Oh yeah.
So I
yeah,
said
yeah.
that
Of course,
DDR Jake. I said that DDR Jake was known for the conquest, conquering the world as the Ryukyu Islands and Europa Universalis 4. But what he was actually known for was conquering the world as the Ryukyu Islands in Europa Universalis 3, and they added the achievement in Europa Universalis 4 because of his success. And then what I saw, because I wasn't a Paradox head in the EU 3 times, what I saw was DDR Jake redoing his achievement in EU 4.
Oh, I see.
And actually, for a while, he was so good. He knew EU4 so well that at one point he actually used to work for Paradox. He was like he was the head developer of EU4 for a bit. So,
oh my gosh, that's pretty cool. Well, thank you, gamers. Thank you, gamers, for this correction.
You ever get so good at a video game that you eventually become head developer of that game? Actually, I think that kind of happened with I think that happened with World of Warcraft, and it's kind of one of the reasons the game has failed.
Oh no!
It's one of the reasons for one of its most recent, sort of its recent problems, because some of the people who are high up at World of Warcraft were like people who were in like some of the top end players, like in the early days of the game. But then they like optimized the game around people who play it a lot, and that kind of led a lot of people to be like, oh, okay.
If there was a video, this is an important question. If there was a video game that what is the video game you are the best at? Not even the best in the world, just you personally are the best at, that you could take it over. That if that would be the only option that people would be like, all right, you can take over this game because this is the best one that you could do.
I'm not very good at any video games.
Same.
I'm so bad at video games. I would probably say, like, if there was any that I could like be so good at that I could take over, because like I have design opinions, it would probably be like D&D or something. I've played the shit out of that system, and I have a lot of issues with it. And
that's fair.
And I would not hire the Pinkertons to hunt down somebody who accidentally got sent the wrong cards personally.
So YouTube's been recommending me a lot of video game speedrunning stuff. I would love to do a damageless or like hitless run of Altered Beast, because I played that game a lot on the Sega Game Gear growing up. I've not done a hitless run, but I don't know if that's a category for speedrunning, a hitless run of Altered Beast. I want to do it. I think that is, I don't think I would be the fastest, but I think I could get on the leaderboards, mostly because I don't think anyone is really playing that game that much. I don't think there's hundreds of people, but there might be like a dozen, and I bet I could be in the top 10.
In November, I turned 35. Any game that requires doing anything fast, I am done. I'm at
You don't have to do, that's the thing about speed runs. They don't even have to be fast. If you do like a damageless run of anything, you can take your sweet time, and chances are it will, if you finish, it'll still be like top 10.
I'm getting to like the point where I don't even want to play non-turn-based games, because I'm just like, this is too fast. I don't want to bother with this shit.
Yeah, I can't, no twitchy games.
I'm becoming ancient. Yeah. I'm becoming a boomer.
Don't tell me this. All right. Let's move on.
Someone also mentioned that I think this is a you correction.
Oh no, don't tell me that.
But we talked in Yonaguni about National Treasure 2, a movie that I have not seen, so I wouldn't have made any claims about.
All right.
The city of gold in National Treasure 2 is Cibola, a Native American set of 7 cities of gold, not El Dorado.
Okay. I thought they mentioned, all right, I'll take their word for it. It is
wrong. You got the wrong city of gold.
I feel like I'm going to look this up. Treasure 2 El Dorado. Fuck, maybe I did get it wrong. All right. Fair enough. It is not El Dorado. I really thought that they were trying to fold that in and claim that El Dorado was in America, because that would have been why specifically in the United States. That would have been wild.
I just imagine that was in an early draft that they then edited, because they're like, El Dorado is not supposed to be in America.
It looks like I'm not the only person who has thought this as well, because there are other people who have made the same mistake. So I'm not alone. But yeah, I think they're right. It's not El Dorado.
In our episode on the Dendera lights, I forgot to mention that oil lanterns do use a wick just like a candle, because we were getting kind of confused for how those lanterns worked. And I forgot to mention that even though they do look like, teapots, they do have a wick coming out the end so that you do light that on fire.
Yeah, because it soaks in the oil, right?
Yeah.
I think. Don't correct me.
In the Bosnian pyramid episode, I was talking about the products of the breakup of Yugoslavia, and I talked about Republika Srpska, but Herzegovina actually existed since the 1400s. Also, I totally mispronounced the hill's name. It's called Vizočica.
Vizočica.
My Bosniak is terrible pronunciation. And also, I referenced to the Illyrians as a tribe. They were not a tribe. They were a collection of peoples. The tribe that inhabited the site were the Dacites of the Pannonian subgroup of the Illyrians. So
these are the corrections that I think I value the most, is like letting us know when we use the wrong language to describe a culture or a group of people or anything like that. Because we've gotten a couple of those before, and it's always very helpful for us moving forward if we revisit a topic. And it's also just nice to know what the correct language is. So I appreciate that. Any people who do that, and we never say anything incorrect out of malice. Obviously, I hope that's clear.
Just to know that I am very stupid, and so that is the reason for most of the mistakes.
Just uninformed, which is why I like these.
All right. Lamino found the source for that Christopher Columbus thing on the Bermuda Triangle video. The TLDW is that Columbus's log says that he saw a meteor in the middle of the North Atlantic in the middle of meteor season, which made me think, oh, meteor season. When is meteor season?
Meteor season. That's when the babies are born and they're trying to get meteor. They're trying to get beefier.
Yeah.
All those buff protein babies. It's meteor season, baby.
Oh my God. In reference to Charles Taylor, he had two compasses. His radio call that both went out and made it much more likely that he experienced a kind of cognitive fixation that CRM, the crew resource management, was developed to protect against. It's caused many airplane accidents. So we talked about this. So Charles Taylor was the commander of the airplanes that ran out of fuel and crashed in the Bermuda Triangle that led to the Bermuda Triangle thing. So it says that he had two compasses, so they wouldn't have gotten lost if one of them had misfunctioned, but that he experienced a kind of cognitive fixation that there are things to protect against, but that and that this has a history of causing airplane accidents. So it was a psychology thing.
Gotcha.
Next, we got, y'all mentioned the Bermuda Triangle episode, then an account of green, then white, then green, but didn't talk about this wildly awesome phenomenon that was captured for the first time this year. Milky seas are caused by rare bioluminescent bacteria, which instead of glowing blue or green, glow white. Current theories predict that this rare glow might be due to a saprophilic relationship, i.e. they feed on decaying organic matter between luminous bacteria and a species of microalgae expressing on a large scale. So one of the things that might have confused him is that he might that the sky, the water might have been like a cloudy white that was glowing almost because of bioluminescent bacteria in the water that were feeding on decaying organic material. Like say
that's interesting.
Billionaires at the bottom of the ocean or something.
Oh no. Tristan, we can't make jokes about the Titanic thing. People are going to hate us.
Is it too old or is it too spicy?
No, apparently it's spicy. I don't think it's that spicy, but people are like, you can't say that.
I'm devastated. I'm crushed.
Don't say that. Come on.
Okay, on the episode on the Will-o'-the-Wisps.
Yes.
Just on an addendum on your Will-o'-the-Wisp episode, a lot of lights have actually been directly proven to just be headlights and superior mirages. Like, I think the Marfa lights are that.
Yeah.
Scott's Marfa light in particular is car headlights from straight on the highway.
Mine? My Marfa light?
I have
one?
I think you talked about the Marfa lights.
Or is that just a famous one?
Scott's Marfa lights.
How do you spell Marfa light? Tell me that one.
MARFA light.
LIGHT. Okay. Scott's Marfa light. No, that's nothing.
Okay.
I guess I talked about it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously headlights wouldn't have been a thing back in like ye olden times when people were doing, when people were making, spotting, the will-o'-the-wisps. But I think modern day.
But yeah, headlights and superior mirages. Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Like these days, there's so much more, I think, stuff to point to that makes more sense. There's lights everywhere. I have so many lights on in my room right now, things glowing like wild. If I was like a will-o'-the-wisp, I would probably hang out somewhere like Vegas or something where like there's lights all around and no one would ever suspect me to be there. Although I guess you do want to lure people. That is sort of their MO. So maybe you wouldn't hang out there.
The next one I think I have, like, I think that there's like a little bit of disconnect. I think that might have been a misunderstanding in the way that I talked about things, because this is a connection that is not mine, that I did not make it myself, but I think that it is. I think there's something. I'll just get into it. So I talked about the boitata, which is sort of like this snake with fire in its eyes that is big in like Brazil and is basically connected to being a will-o'-the-wisp, or being like similar to the story of the will-o'-the-wisp. So someone said that a boitata is nothing like a will-o'-the-wisp. More often than not, boitata is said to be a giant fire serpent. Sometimes just the eyes are on fire. Sometimes the whole body is on fire. And when it isn't, to my knowledge, only in the South, it's described as two balls of fire that float on top of the fence poles on both sides of a gate. Second, most stories about it being on big open fields, not on swamps and forests. And finally, it doesn't lead anywhere. If anything, it's the one following you. In the Southern version, where it's more malicious kind of creature, or it just stands there menacingly. Other versions where it's a fire spirit that protects nature from evildoers. So that is true. I think that I think that when I was trying to make the connection, I was not making a connection like this was a story about the will-o'-the-wisp that got changed by entering Brazilian culture, because I think this has more connection with indigenous culture. But what I think I meant is what they got here, is that they are both derived from the same phenomenon. They're both made of fire that is shaped like a ball, and that the scientific behind the reason, like gas produced from decomposition catching fire, is the same. The only difference is that in Brazil, it's fairly often gas coming off from dead livestock. That's why in a lot of post-Columbian sightings of boitata in Brazil, they tend to be found in places where there's a lot of cattle, because Brazil raises a lot of cows.
Makes sense.
Where a lot of North America's beef imports come from.
It's where cows are.
Yeah, it's what cows.
That's where cows are. That's why. That's if you ever meet a cow and it's got a Brazilian accent, that's why.
Yeah, that's why cows love football. Okay,
love it.
Next, I got in the Grim Reaper episode, I referred to.
They call it hoofball, by the way, just so you know. They call it hoofball.
Oh, okay. Okay. In the Grim Reaper episode, I talked about Japan saying that a fox spirit was called a kitsune. Somebody pointed out that kitsune is just the Japanese word for fox. And that the Japanese just have myths that foxes grow magically powerful if they live long enough.
That's cool.
And that the term firefox is actually not a reference to a fox, but is actually a nickname for the red panda.
Oh, wait, does that mean the Firefox logo, the browser logo, is inaccurate?
I don't know.
Then I'm sure we're not the first people to make this revelation, because I think it is just a fox on the Firefox logo.
Yeah. Also, that I said that Dia de los Muertos is syncretic with All Saints Day, which is on November 1st, but it's actually syncretic with the Feast of All Souls Day, which is on November 2nd.
Okay.
And it's definitely not, so it's not All Saints Eve, which is October 31st after sundown, or Halloween, and it's not on All Saints Day on November 1st, but it's All Souls Day on November 2nd. You might understand why me, a non-Catholic, would have been confused there.
A lot of holidays all in a row. A lot of things going on there. Yeah.
Second thing I got here is that Dia de los Muertos is also not a single homogenous thing, and range from early to mid-October all the way to late November, depending on the region and ethnic group. Each day dedicated to a particular way of dying. Within the hegemonic colonial system, N1 is for children, N2 is for adults. But indigenous festivities do also N1 November 1st, November 2nd. So November 1st is Children's Day of the Dead, and November 2nd is Adults' Day of the Dead. Indigenous festivities do also do things for drowning, those who've been struck by lightning, those who died from falling, those from fires, those from disease, etc., etc. And I also conflated La Catrina, the Mexican like kind of image of the Day of the Dead, sort of like the mascot of the Day of the Dead, which comes from like a 19th century thing, is not the same as Santa Muerte, which is its own figure. Despite the fact that they're both skeletal figures, are different skeletal figures.
Different skeletons. There's more than one.
La Catrina can be in the form of the Grim Reaper, but I'm mixing the Atole and Pozole by mixing them together via their association with the Grim Reaper and being anthropomorphic personifications of death. So both are anthropomorphic personifications of death. Both are associated with the Grim Reaper, but they are different figures and distinctly different figures. One is like a reference to a holiday that is like cherished, and one is actually considered like Santa Muerte by the Catholic Church is considered heresy. So
gotcha. It's like Santa and Jesus. You celebrate them around the same time every year, but they're very different. And one of them's quite religious. This could be all wrong, what I'm saying.
The other thing I got here is that in Latvian mythology, the thing I talked about Latvian mythology, it's called Vejumate or Vejumats, and it translates something akin to Mother of Spirits or Mother of Dead Souls. I also mentioned the Wild Hunt as being a Welsh thing, but it's actually not specifically a Welsh thing, and it has origins in several Germanic folk traditions as well, and they are also a big part of Scandinavian folklore, which then makes The Witcher make a lot more sense because The Witcher is primarily informed by Polish mythology, and that fits closer.
Did you hear that they're gonna contextually like replace, because we already knew they were going to replace Henry Cavill, but they're going to do it in universe text. They're going to in universe like come up with a reason why he looks different. They're not just going to start doing it.
Henry Cavill gets stabbed through the heart, and as he's about to like collapse, he starts glowing orange, and he like gets up and it blows in his energy, and he regenerates into
he's like
Hemsworth.
I'll always remember when The Witcher was me, and then and then that's him, new Witcher.
On the episode about John Winthrop, I mentioned it being in Middle English. It is not Middle English; it's Early Modern English. My bad. The UAP episode, I also got a lot of shit for, because the UAP stuff was. I think that people have like a lot of the UAP stuff that's come out of the military. There's been I've had a bit of a change of heart on a lot of stuff with the UAP stuff. I think I'm coming more around to the conclusion that the US is drawing a lot of attention to UAP stuff because it's a way to justify more investment in the US military budget without having to have an enemy country to put stuff in. And so
I see.
There have been several sleuths who have looked closely at some of these major UAP incidences and have debunked them for the most part, pointing out that the gimbal was probably a private jet and a mix of a private jet and some equipment issues. The Go Fast was probably a balloon, but because of perspective and altitude, it looked different. And I also said that the Little Ailey Inn is in Roswell, but it's actually in Rachel, Nevada, because it's actually not near Roswell, it's near Area 51. And the Ailey Inn, which I have also been to, is the only place near Area 51 where you can get a hotel room.
Good marketing then for them.
Yeah, and I think made some off comment about how Russian drones are sort of doing successful on like doing the cheap and disposable drones rather than like the big expensive ones. And they disagreed with my take on that. And I will say that it was a controversial take, and it's still one that I think is still being fought out in Europe right now. And I don't think that the answer about whether cheap and disposable drones versus like big and expensive drones has been settled.
Fair enough.
And hopefully it won't be, because I feel like if US drones and Russian drones are actively going head to head with each other, there might not be much of a world left if that conflict is happening.
I don't think we'll have a good time debating that. I don't think that's going to be the most pressing matter right now, is to be like, all right, let's get on our podcast and talk about who was right and who was wrong. I think there'll be more pressing issues if that happens.
Now, I don't know if I mentioned it in the episode or not, because this was a while ago, but I will mention that this is kind of an important side of it, which is that I might have said that they were Russian drones, and I will point out that Russia has not been. I don't think Russia's been the one making these drones. They're buying them from Iran, and it's Iran that has found out how to make a drone for $10,000 from like parts they bought on Alibaba and such. But
nice.
It's more complicated, obviously.
Well, I think we'll probably end it there for this week then. For this quarterly corrections episode. Thank you again to everyone who wrote in on our Twitter account. We also have a corrections form at probsnotaliens.com where you can send in corrections about specific episodes. And we just appreciate everyone, even if some of them are more opinions rather than, what have you.
Disagreements, I should say.
Disagreements. It's still fun to have these conversations, and we like like having them with you, and we just like showing that we're listening to you, and I don't know, it's like a fun community interaction thing. I like it.
Yeah.
Do you like it?
I'm generally a fan of our show, and I do like being honest and transparent with people. So I'm down to keep this going. It's a good quarterly thing. It's a fun way to also give us a little bit, or at least give my research load a little bit of a breather.
Yeah, which is very helpful. Again, if you want to issue any other corrections or insights that you might have, you can go find us on Twitter or Instagram at probsnotaliens, as well as our website, probsnotaliens.com, where you can find links to everything about the show, including where to listen to it. If you want to send this show to someone, tell them about it. That's always a good time. It's a great website. And Tristan, where can people find more of you and your stuff?
I have a channel called Step Back, which is all about trying to get perspective on the world today by stepping back and looking at the history and context behind what's happening. Despite that being the channel's goal, my most recent video, because of like VidCon and other things, I decided to just make a shit post where I do a tier list of every single US president based on pros and cons and smash or pass. So enjoy that.
Very important. Very, very, very important.
What about you, Scott? If I wanted to learn more about... Wait, I got to do the bit.
Do the bit. Find an old video of mine.
If I wanted to learn why the Eternal comics are all so bad...
That's not that old. That's a video that you and I did together, actually, about the Eternals.
You're right. Yeah, that was an advertisement for the show.
And it's an advertisement for this show because it's also about ancient aliens. You can go check that out over on my YouTube channel, Nerdsync, Nerdsync. Links to all this stuff will be in the description. I also have new videos that I'm working on that'll be very fun and upsetting, potentially. So look forward to that. Thank you to everyone who writes reviews of this show on Apple Podcasts and people who provide feedback on Spotify. Those are really fun. I get emails about all that all the time. Thank you for taking the time out to do that. Until next time, my name is Scott Nicewander.
I'm Tristan Johnson, and the truth is out there. Probably, unless I get it wrong.
Hey, I got something wrong this time, I think. I already forgot what it was. Don't tell me. I want to pretend I'm right.
It's about National Treasure 2.
Oh, yeah.
How could you possibly get a Nick Cage fact wrong?
How could I get it wrong?